Well, for the next couple of weeks, I want to talk to you about money. And some of you have a predictable reaction. If he turns down the lights, we're out of here. By the way, when you leave when the lights are low, I see you more clearly because you're backlit. So, like, if you ever leave during a video, I know exactly who just walked out. Or you thought, hey, I got an idea. Pinch the baby and make her cry. Usher will come and we'll act like we're going to another room. No one will ever know. Maybe you think, oh no, I knew I should have come to this church. That's exactly what I expected. All they want is my money. By the way, if you think that all we want is your money, keep your money. Don't give a dime. Don't ever tithe. Ignore every special offering. Don't give to feed hungry children, rescue trafficked women, or buy a Bible. Don't even give your change the first of the month when we ask for it. If a penny accidentally drops out of your pocket, don't leave without picking it up. Don't give a thing and watch. See if we treat you any different. See if we withhold ministry from you, come to your house for a confrontation, or treat your kids different. It won't happen. You'll be ministered to and treated and loved just the same. So if you think all we want is your money, then let me just take that away. Keep your money. I don't want that to be your excuse for not coming to church. The Bible has a lot to say about money. In fact, 15% of Jesus' teaching was on this subject, more than his teaching about heaven and hell combined. Why? Because even in Bible times, people struggled with how to handle their money, how to honor God with their money, how to keep stuff in the right perspective. Jesus knew this would be a huge issue and a significant struggle in our lives. Over the next few weeks, I want to teach principles you can use to transform your financial life and your financial future. I want to be upfront and candid so you don't have to wonder, here's my agenda. Number one, I want you to be financially free, to live by God's system, a different system than people around you. I want you to experience security and peace in the area of your finances. Number two, I want you to be blessed and to be a blessing, giving more and doing more for the kingdom of God than you ever thought possible. And finally, I want you to raise your children and grandchildren to approach money in a safe, sensible, healthy way. Some of you have really messed up in this part of your life. I challenge you to teach your children a different way to live. Your children are learning these same principles. Take the family devotions from the bulletin and do them together to reinforce the lesson. And let's teach our children to handle money better than us. Another great way to learn is to play the memory game. So if you stop by the table in the lobby, you can pick up a pack of cards. We'll have new ones each week. You know the old game where you just lay the cards down and pick them up and see if they match? Play that with kids and talk about the principles. Everyone has guiding principles for their finances. And you might be saying, well, not me. I don't have any principles. I just live day to day. I'm just getting by. If that's the case, you haven't written your principles, but you're living by them. Most people live according to one or all of these principles. Number one, spend what I have. If I get a tax refund or a tax rebate, another chance to buy. Whatever I have, I spend. Then, do what I want. I know I should be saving some money for retirement or something, but I'm going to worry about that later. Another part of that strategy is I've got to have it now. I can't wait. That TV will look so good in our living room. I'll look so good in that car. I'm not going to wait. I have to have it now, and that's okay because I'll pay for it later. Because I have this wonderful thing called a credit card. I can have what I want when I want it, and I don't have to worry about it because it's 12 months interest free. How can we not buy it? I need more. We're obsessed with the thought of more, bigger, better, upgraded, new, improved, and I deserve it. Advertising does a masterful job of convincing you you deserve to have gleaming white teeth, wrinkle-free skin, the latest phone, a shiny car, a new 4K Ultra TV. You don't just want it or need it, you deserve it. That's how most people live, by those principles. And that's why thinking or talking about money is stressful to them. Then after applying all those principles, they have one more thought. I can't afford to tithe and give 10% of my income to God. Well, looking at those financial principles, I can understand why. When I first became pastor, talking about money made me nervous. Now it doesn't make me nervous at all because I understand this is a huge issue in your life. And for many of you, this is the one thing that stands between you and total commitment to Jesus. So let's get going. Several years ago, Pastor Patrick and I walked through the Forbidden City in Beijing, China, a historical and cultural landmark. There were dozens of tour groups there, each led by a leader carrying a flag. And then everyone in the tour group had hats that matched the color of the flag. And the way they stayed together is they just made sure they were following that flag. Now, some of you would be horrible at that. You won't sign a sign-in sheet. There's no way you'd wear the hat. And there's no way you'd follow the flag, right? I get that. I know you. Do you remember as a kid playing Follow the Leader on the playground? Last time I played that was a couple years ago with a group of first graders. And it was just so much fun. I was jumping and running and skipping and sliding, followed by a group of hysterically laughing first graders who we'd snuck out of class to play, so they loved it. When it comes to life and financial decisions, make sure you're following the right leader. That's the first principle. Follow the leader. Learn about financial things from people who are smarter than you and who've accomplished what you want to accomplish. Follow someone who knows where they're going. This is biblical. Paul wrote, Philippians chapter 3, join with others in following my example, brothers. Take note of those who live according to the pattern we gave you. So Paul said, follow me. Live like me by this pattern and these principles. When it comes to money, who's the right leader? Who should you follow? Well, I suggest you base your financial life and decisions on the principles contained in this book. The Bible is our guidebook for living. We're going to look at principles from this book. And you say, okay, so Rod, the person I'm supposed to follow in the area of my money is God. But what about day-to-day decisions? You know, how much am I supposed to save? Which credit card should I pay on first? Can I sit down with God and can I show him my credit card bills? Well, make sure whoever you ask, whoever you follow, whoever you receive advice from is living by and teaching the principles in this book. If you don't follow the right leader who lives by and teaches the right principles, then you'll end up in the wrong place. If you want God's blessing in your finances, you have to follow God's instructions. God has to be your leader. That seems obvious, but many people never make that connection. They disobey God's instructions, and then they wonder why they don't receive God's blessings. Well, if your children bless you, if your children disobey you, do you bless them for that? No. When they disobey you, you discipline so they'll learn the lesson and they won't repeat the mistake. At your office, who gets promoted? The person who follows the boss's instructions or the person who does it their own way? It's pretty obvious. If you want the promotion or the raise, the blessing, then you follow the instructions. No different with God. If you want his blessings, you have to follow his instructions. Another game I used to love to play was Simon Says. Do you remember the electronic version? I found one. I realize it's horribly rude to just stand here and play it. And you just kind of watch for what color lit. Okay, light. And then you got to do whatever it does. You don't know how hard this is in front of a group of people. You're saying, like, I could do that easy, not in front of everybody. I never liked the electronic version. I like the real, be quiet. Stop that. I don't know how to make it stop. Periodically for the rest of this message, that thing is just going to be yelling at us. I like the real version of Simon Says. You remember playing it? Here's the secret of kids' church. When church went long, we played games. And Simon Says is the best game because it can take forever. You know how it goes. Simon Says, stand up. Simon Says, stand up. Have you never played this game? Simon Says, turn around. Simon Says, stop turning around. Simon Says, shake the hand of the person next to you. Okay, that was fun. Sit down. Oh, look how many of you just lost. You're bad. Simon Says, sit down. All right. You win by doing what Simon says. If you do something Simon didn't say, you lose. The Simon Says principle is the principle of strict obedience. If you don't listen to God and do what he says, you lose. If you obey another voice, you lose. Except that God knows what's best for you and listen to his voice. Now, if you're not interested in obeying God, feel free to tune me out and do things your own way. But don't expect God to bless you. Don't be that foolish. You can do everything else right. You can be cautious. You can be wise. But if you don't obey God, ultimately you'll lose. That's just inevitable. We've been looking at one of the most familiar passages in Scripture in regards to money. Malachi 3, will a man rob God? You rob me. And you ask, how do we rob you? In tithes and offerings. You're under a curse, the whole nation of you, because you're robbing me. So I'm extreme. I won't use a financial advisor who's not a tither. That would scare me to death. If they will rob from God, what would keep them from robbing from me? God said, bring the whole tithe in the storehouse. There may be food in my house. Test me in this. See if I won't throw open the floodgates of heaven, pour out so much blessing you won't have room enough for it. So if you want to live according to God's system, following his plan, the starting place is to tithe, to give God the first 10% of your income. You say, well, how can I do that with all my bills now? Where's that going to come from? There's never been a more important time to start. You need God's blessing and help. You win when you do what he says. Tithing's simple. I started when I was a kid, and you have $10. And God says, I just want one. And you say, God, you only want one of the 10? I'll tell you what, God, you're a good God. I appreciate you and all that. I'm going to give you another one. Later, you make a little more money, and now you have 10 $10 bills. And again, God says, I just want one. Say, God, just one? I mean, you've blessed me with this. You've given me the ability to make this just one. God said, that's what I asked for. One. Then later, you make a little more. And now you have 10 $100 bills. And God says, I just want one. You say, whoa, hold on a second, God. That's a lot of money. Right? And you look at the amount and you decide you really don't need to obey God because that's a lot of money, and you move out from under his system. When you ignore God's instruction, you choose to lose the game and to live without his blessing. Now, depending on which study you read, somewhere between 5 and 10% of Americans who call themselves Christians tithe. 5 to 10%. The average Christian household in America gives only about 2.5% of their income to the Lord. That's a stunning amount of disobedience. Last year was the best financial year in the history of our church. We did more and gave more than ever before. So how are we doing? Even with all that, the facts are pretty sobering. The average yearly income in Arkansas for a full-time worker is just over $29,500 a year. The median family income in Little Rock, that's household income, is $41,995. So for my study, I decided to choose a much lower number and cut it more than in half. I chose $20,000 a year, about $975 an hour as the number. So if $20,000 a year is what every household in our church made, then the tithe from that household, not just one person, it's everybody in the house that works. The tithe from the household, if $20,000 was all the household brought in, their tithe would be about $2,000. We have 2,651 households who attend regularly here at the main campus, 2,651. Of those 2,651 households, only 758 gave $2,000 or more in tithe. That's about 28.6% of our church. No, that's triple the national average. Pretty good, right? But the other side of that percentage means that 71% of our households don't tithe. We have to talk about this because a huge percentage of our church is not obeying God's instruction regarding their money. That number makes me feel like a failure. Only 3 out of 10 families in our church obey God in the area of their finances. If 70% of you were committing sexual sin, I'd talk about that every week. We need to talk about this. If every household that's currently disobeying, God gave God the minimum, 10%, and the whole household only made $20,000, almost $4 million more would go to the kingdom this year. We could give thousands more to missions, plant more churches, if everyone just did what God said. We could expand our ministry to cool kids, special need kids, even greater. We could reach our goal of feeding 1,000 hungry kids every week. We could more aggressively reach out to immigrants. We could do all that, and we could have a fleet of buses picking up anyone in Central Arkansas who wanted to come to church. That's just if everyone obeyed God and did their part, and we assume they all make less than half the average. So the next time you complain about us not doing something that you think we should do, that's probably why we don't. There are things I've had in my mind and heart for our church for 16 years. I want to do it. We need to do it. The only thing that keeps us from it is a lack of obedience. When I shared these numbers with our team, I wish you could have heard my son Parker talking about this. Now, you got to know Parker. Parker's a tither. He's always been a tither. He gives far in excess of 10% of his income to God. And he's Parker. And he went on about a 10-minute rampage where finally we just all sat back. I said, Parker, I should just have you come out and say that. But he said, 30%? Can you imagine the complaints if our parking lot was 30% paved? Or if only 30% of people got chairs to sit in? What would parents say if their kids get 30% on their report card? There's no area of life where 30% is acceptable. Now, Parker's pretty strong. I'm a little more patient. I'm patient with people who are new to church and new to faith. I understand they may have to reorder their lives in order to obey God. But I struggle with people who've been here forever, been in church for years, and intentionally choose disobedience. Now, I want to settle one thing. My salary is set by our board of directors and is reviewed by an outside independent compensation committee. Even though last year was the best financial year in our history, I didn't receive a raise because I didn't allow the board to consider my salary. My salary this year is the same as my salary last year. I'm not on a percentage. If you give more, I'm not going to make more. If you give a big offering this week, I'm going to get the same paycheck next week. I don't have some kind of personal stake in this. My agenda is you, not me. I want to see you enjoy God's blessing on your finances. Obeying God leads to blessing. When you ignore God, you lose. Proverbs 11:25 says, I'm setting before you a blessing and a curse. The blessing if you obey the command of the Lord your God I'm giving you today. The curse if you disobey the command of the Lord your God and turn from the ways I command you. You say, well, I still think you're just trying to get more money. No, we not only teach this, we practice it. Last year, 2017, our team gave back $19.2 0.88% of their total compensation. That's not just salary. That's total package. Salary plus retirement plus health insurance. They gave back 20% of that. Over the years, Cindy and I have gradually increased our percentage we give to God. We have some things we started doing many years ago so we could keep bumping up that percentage. Last year, we gave just over 40% of my salary back to the church. So we believe in this. This is not, if I need a raise, I could just cut what I give. That's not what this is about. God just keeps blessing us, and I want you to experience that same thing. When writing this message, I opened Google Maps to get directions to a new restaurant. And you know what I discovered? I think it's really intolerant of Google Maps. Before they'll tell you how to get somewhere, you have to tell them where you are. That doesn't seem to make sense to me. To get directions, you have to identify your current location. That's why the map at the mall has a big arrow that says, "You are here." Recognize it? When people ask for help with their finances, one of my first questions is, well, how much debt do you have? Almost every time the answer is, well, I'm not really sure. And I'll say, okay, what are your monthly expenses? Well, I don't know. I've really never added them up. It amazes me, but people don't know where they stand financially. They don't know their current location. If you want to change, you first have to face reality. I call it the "you are here" principle. Before you can have a plan, you have to know where you are. So why don't people know? I think there are three basic reasons. Number one, pride. You don't want to admit it. If you admit it, you have to acknowledge your mistakes, so it's easier just to never kind of look at it. You don't want to add up all those credit card bills. Number two, shame. You look at your debt and you can't believe it, and you say, how could I have done that? How could I have made such poor decisions? Number three, fear. You fear what you'll discover if you add everything up. It will be absolutely overwhelming, so you avoid confronting the truth. But if you want to change, you have to face reality. You need to know. Here's some basic things you need to know. You need to go out and figure this out. How much do I make after taxes? How much do I have in the bank? What are my monthly expenses? My fixed monthly expenses. What's my debt? What percentage of my income do I currently give to God? You should know all those things. Jesus taught this principle. Jesus said, suppose one of you wants to build a tower. Will he not first sit down and estimate the cost to see if he has enough money to complete it? If he lays the foundation and is not able to finish, everyone who sees it will ridicule him. Some of you are living in houses you can't afford. You're driving cars beyond your budget. You're taking trips on credit and going deeper and deeper in debt every month. Sit down with a calculator, add it up, face reality. The easy way to teach your kids this principle is on a computer. Do what I did. Go to Google Maps and try to get directions to Kilwin's ice cream without a starting point. It doesn't work. You have to know where you are to get to where you want to be. That just makes sense. Now, this final principle I want to share with you today is one of the keys to living by a different system. This one's huge. This is absolutely revolutionary. You can do this. You can teach your kids to do it. I call it the Sam Walton principle. Sam Walton created Walmart. He was worth millions and billions of dollars. But you couldn't tell by looking. He still drove his pickup and dressed like an ordinary person. Even though he's a billionaire, Sam wore a beat-up Walmart hat. My head is not shaped right to wear this hat. Sam learned the secret of disciplined living below his means. Ecclesiastes 7 says, it's good to grasp the one and not let go of the other. The man who fears God will avoid extremes. We live in an extreme world. People are obsessed with living large, having the biggest and the best. But the man who fears God avoids all extremes. That includes financial extremes. When I was 12 years old, my dad taught me this principle. My first job was mowing lawns. I would pull my lawnmower behind my 10-speed bicycle, go from door to door in the neighborhood, and undercut the competition with my great prices. I mowed a lot of lawns. And since that time, I've always worked. Always. I worked every day after school in high school and all day on Saturdays. I worked full-time when I went to college. And at about 11 or 12, my dad started me on a system. First 10% goes to God. That was already automatic. I already knew that part of the system. I mean, when I was 5 and I got 25 cents for my allowance, I rounded up because I was generous and I gave God 3 cents a week. So I've never questioned tithing. I've never departed for it. In fact, the reason why Cindy are at the percentage we're at is because every year we just bump it up a little. 0.5% or 1%, and eventually you get there. 10% is the minimum. I never wanted to do minimum. I never want to be average. So the first 10% went to God. Then, the system we put in place, I could spend 50% on anything I wanted. Baseball cards, eating out, going on dates, gifts from my girlfriend, shoes. I really like shoes. However I wanted to spend the money. 10% to God, 50% I could blow, and then 40% went into savings. I only spent half of what I made. I started that at 11 or 12 years old, and I did it for years. Every year, every week, 10% to God, 40% to savings. You can't imagine how much money I had by the time I got married. I still had 40% of everything I had ever made. Now, over the years, the percentages have shifted, but because I aggressively saved and invested early in life, I have margin and I can give more to God later in life. I still have that original money. Now, I'm about to have a grandbaby. She's already super expensive, and she needs to hurry up. I mean, the due date's February 20th, and I don't understand this. I mean, let's go. This is just crazy. We need to have that kid. So we're praying like the gravitational pull of the moon or something to just kick into it. We were sure that big blue moon, that was just going to pull the baby out. It's still there. I don't even know what I was talking about. Oh, she's expensive. You can't imagine how much money Cindy's spending on the baby. We haven't even seen yet. It's criminal how many swimsuits we have for a kid that can't swim. But I still don't spend everything I make. I save a big percentage and I give a bigger percentage. I don't want to ever live within my means. I want to always live below my means. Why is that so important to me? Because I want to obey God's will and direction for my life. I never want to be so financially obligated that I can't go where He directs.